you may want to sell because of the fact that you can't handle losing, having the markets go negative, which they do on occasion. That's just the way the markets are. That's normal. Markets go up and they go down.
Hello, this is Mark Silverman, managing member and founder of Silverman & Associates, and I'm also a certified financial planner professional. I want to welcome you to the Saving with Silverman podcast. I'm glad you're here. Each week, we'll discuss different financial planning topics because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
Let's talk about the wrong questions. A lot of people have questions about their retirement plan, if they have one indeed, but we find that they could often be asking much better questions. One question that a lot of people have asked you, I'm certain, over the years, Mark, how much money do I need to have saved in order to retire? Is there a better question they should be asking there?
There is. And, I always hate that question because there's so many different variables. Everybody's number is different. It depends on, how much income you're going to need in retirement. Everybody spends a different amount. The more you make, the more you typically spend. What age are you retiring? What's your life expectancy? What do you plan on doing in retirement? So that number is going to be dependent on many different factors. So there's not a general rule as far as everybody needs to save X amount of dollars to retire. Some people say, well, you need $1 million to retire. That's not the case. In fact, a lot of people need a lot more than that to retire. So everybody's number is different. And that's why it's important to have a financial plan.
Well, also, a lot of people ask you, should I get long-term care insurance or just roll the dice? We've talked so many times about how a lot of us are going to need long-term care at some point in our lives. And is there a better way to ask that question that they should be using?
Yeah, it's just understanding what your options are. I mean, just rolling the dice means you're self-insuring, which is an option. But you should look to see there's other options out there. Actually, there's more options now than there used to be. Long-term care insurance is still an option. There's actually life insurance that has long-term care benefits, which is probably my preferred method. And we do a lot with that with clients. So it's just understanding what your options are so you can make an educated decision on what you want to do and how you're going to cover that expense. Because the numbers are, whether it's one in three or 2 in 3, depending on who you ask, are going to spend some amount of time in a long-term care facility. So if you're married, there's a great chance that one of you is going to spend some time in there, and you want to make sure that you have that covered and what your options are, and then you can make an informed decision on what you want to do or not do based on that.
We talk about that complimentary 20-minute introductory call a lot, and I'm going to give out the number here in just a few minutes again. But a lot of people, I'm sure, when you sit down with them for the very first time, say, Mr. Silverman, how can I get the highest possible return on my money?
Sure, and everybody calls me Mark. I don't go by Mr. Silverman.
Okay, yeah. Mark, how can I get the highest possible return on my money? Is that a good question to ask?
It isn't, because everybody wants the highest return with the least amount of risk. So, we talk about risk adjusted returns. So everybody wants a great return. And I understand that, especially with inflation running rampant, it's important to keep pace with inflation. But it's risk versus return. So the more risk you take, the more return you're going to get. The less risk you take, the less return you're going to get on average. So it's important to understand how much risk are you willing to take, or how much risk do you need to take to keep on track with your goals. And so everybody's number there is different. Again, everything's customized. There isn't one size fits all in our industry, which I think is important to understand. Just because you or your friends or your neighbors or whatever might be doing something, that doesn't mean that would apply to you. So it's important to understand that everybody's situation is different. And so understanding how much risk you're comfortable taking, how much risk you need to take to keep pace with inflation and to keep on track for your goals is what's important. And so that's what you need to focus on, not just getting the highest rate of return, because that could mean that you're taking a lot more risk than you're comfortable taking. And then when the market's correct, kind of like what we are in at this stage of the game right now this year, you may want to sell because of the fact that you can't handle losing, having the markets go negative, which they do on occasion. That's just the way the markets are. That's normal. Markets go up and they go down.
You're listening to Mark Silverman of Silverman & Associates. 520-333-7601 is your number to call to get in touch. I'll repeat that number again coming up in just a few minutes here. But Mark, a lot of people aren't even aware of the kind of fees they're paying in their portfolio, and a lot of people are paying a lot more than they think, and they're absolutely shocked. But some people are, relatively savvy, and they know about the fees, and they say, where can I pay the lowest fees for financial advice? That's not necessarily a good question to ask either, is it?
And savvy people aren't looking for the cheapest. That's what I tell people. As I tell people when they ask what our fees are, I say we're not the most expensive and we're not the cheapest, and you don't want to work with the cheapest. So, the cheapest is probably going to be doing it yourself, which you're able to do that.
Yeah.
But as I tell people, it's not what you pay, but or what it costs, but what it's worth. And I think that's really what's important. Hopefully you're working with someone and you know what you're paying and you're receiving value. If you know what you're paying and you feel that's a fair price, then you should be receiving value for that. If you don't know what you're paying, then it's hard to perceive value because you don't even know what you're paying. But, it's important to understand and work with somebody that's fully transparent so you feel like you're paying a fair price for the value that you're given. And so that's what's important, is making sure you're working with someone, because the last thing you want to do is make a big mistake with your financial future and have it cost you and your family lots more money than you probably would pay in fees. So it's important to make sure you're on the right track.
Mark, let's just say that I made that phone call and I have an appointment and I come in and we sit down to talk, and one of the first things that comes out of my mouth is, what can I do to pay less in taxes this year?
And that's part of what we do. I'm not a CPA. We typically are not allowed to give tax advice, but we can point you in the right direction. We can work with your CPA, or if you don't have a CPA, we can recommend somebody here locally that we feel does good work. And so, it's important to understand that, taxes are a big portion of what we do, and making the right decision can have a big impact on it. So which account should you draw from if you need money? Some have different tax impacts depending on which account you draw from. So it's giving you advice that's going to be in your best interest, that takes all these different areas into consideration, including, like you just mentioned, taxes. So, being smart about making the right decision and being proactive and having a strategy is really what's important. And too many advisors in our industry are just focused on picking investments, aren't really looking at the tax side, which is really a disservice to our clients.
Mark, a lot of people have been listening to this show for a long time. We've been doing it for years, and they may be asking the wrong questions. They would like to ask the right questions, especially after listening to this segment of our show. What happens after someone makes a phone call and gets an appointment to talk with you? How's that conversation going to work out?
Yeah, you're going to reach out. You're going to speak with Christine, who works with me. She'll get you on my calendar for a 15, 20-minute phone call. I'll answer any questions that you have. I'm happy to give you some information on how we work and that sort of thing. If everything goes well, I'll have you come into the office if we think we're both a good fit, have you come into the office for a getting acquainted meeting and go from there. But really, nothing happens to you to reach out. And it's really the first step. A lot of people are reaching out lately, given what's going on in the markets this year so far. And now's a good time to kind of review things and make sure that you have the right strategy, or maybe you don't even know what strategy you're in. So it's important that you get a good understanding of that. I try to help everybody. That doesn't mean everybody's a good fit for what we do, but I'll at least point you in the right direction if we're not a good fit. So that's my promise to you, is try to help you the best that I can. But again, I can't help you until you reach out. So that's the important thing.
You've been listening to the Saving with Silverman podcast. If you have any questions at all about your financial situation, please give Mark Silverman a call. Again, his number is 520-333-7601, or go online to savingwithsilverman.com. For Mark Silverman, I'm Ron Stutz. We'll see you next time on the Saving with Silverman podcast.
The Saving with Silverman podcast is brought to you by Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC, based in Tucson, Arizona. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and everywhere you listen to shows. Subscribe to the show on your favorite app today and never miss an episode. Just search for Saving with Silverman to find us, or visit savingwithsilverman.com to listen to past episodes, to contact Mark, and to learn more about how to make smarter decisions with your money.
Did you know that Mark Silverman also has a radio show? Tune in to Saving with Silverman Saturdays and Sundays at 3 p.m. on AM 790 KNST.
All matters discussed on this show are for informational purposes only. Opinions expressed are solely those of Silverman & Associates Wealth Management LLC and staff. All topics covered are believed to be from reliable sources. However, Silverman & Associates Wealth Management LLC makes no representation as to its accuracy or completeness. The show shall in no way be construed as a solicitation to sell securities or investment advisory services to residents of any state other than Arizona or where otherwise permitted. Topics should be discussed with your individual advisor prior to implementation. Fee-based financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Silverman & Associates Wealth Management LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Arizona. Insurance products and services are offered through Silverman & Associates, an affiliated company.